Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how my family betrayed me in the worst way possible. 4 months ago, I got a call that changed everything. My mother, in the calmest voice, told me that my sister Vivi had moved into my lake house. Without asking. She needed a fresh start, they said. But what they didn't tell me? Vivi wasn't just staying there. She was calling it hers. She redecorated, posted it all over social media, convinced my parents that I didn't need it. And when I tried to take back what was mine, she fought back. Hard. Manipulation. Lies. Even legal fraud. And my own parents took her side. By the time I realized what she was doing, she had already gone too far. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, casting golden streaks across the polished mahogany desk. The soft hum of the city below blended with the quiet buzz of my phone beside me. I had spent the last 3 hours combing through investment reports, mentally calculating my next real estate acquisition. My career demanded precision. There was no room for distractions. Then, my phone rang. I barely glanced at the screen before answering. "Hey, Mom." Lillian Laurent's voice greeted me with its usual warmth, but something in her tone felt off. "Sarah, sweetheart, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I leaned back in my chair, stretching slightly. "Not at all. What's up?" She hesitated, just a split second, but enough for my pulse to tick up. "Well, I just wanted to talk to you about Vivi." My body stiffened instinctively. My younger sister, Vivi, had a way of turning any conversation into a plea for help, a request for money, or a passive-aggressive comment about how easy my life was compared to hers. "What about Vivi?" I asked, already bracing myself. "She's been living at the lake house for a few months now," my mother said, the words tumbling out as if she wanted to get them over with quickly. "It's been such a blessing for her, you know? After the divorce, she really needed a fresh start." The air in the room seemed to thin. I gripped the armrests of my chair. "What did you just say?" Lillian let out a nervous chuckle. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, honey. She's been staying at the lake house for about 4 months now. We figured it wouldn't be a big deal. You weren't using it anyway." I sat up straight, my heart hammering in my chest. "You figured?" "Mom, that house is mine. You didn't think to ask me before letting her move in?" "Well, Vivi needed somewhere to go, and it was just sitting there," she said lightly, as if this were a minor inconvenience, not a blatant violation of my trust. I pressed my fingers to my temple, forcing my voice to stay level. "It's not just sitting there, Mom. It's an investment property. I bought it, renovated it, and plan to rent it out." A sigh crackled through the line. "Oh, Sarah, you work so hard, always thinking about investments and finances. Can't you just let this go? Vivi has been through so much." I felt my teeth clench. "And I haven't? I worked for everything I have, Mom. Vivi—" "She's family," she interrupted. "Family helps family." A bitter laugh bubbled up inside me, but I swallowed it down. Family helps family. Where was this sentiment when I was scraping by in college, working 2 jobs to pay tuition while Vivi burned through her trust fund on yoga retreats and photography classes she never finished? "How long were you going to wait before telling me?" I asked, voice like ice. "We're telling you now, aren't we?" she said quickly. "And besides, she's really happy there. She's even making a few little improvements." My stomach dropped. "Improvements?" "Oh, nothing major. Just some accent walls. She has such a great eye for design, remember?" I shot up from my chair, pacing toward the window. The familiar Chicago skyline felt a million miles away from my reach. "Mom, that house is not Vivi's. She can't just change things without my permission." "You're overreacting, sweetheart. It's just paint." I clenched my fists, my breath coming in shallow. This wasn't just paint. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was my property, my hard-earned investment, and Vivi had waltzed in and made it her own, with my parents' blessing. Needing space to think, I ended the call with a vague excuse about a meeting and immediately pulled up Vivi's Instagram. My fingers trembled slightly as I scrolled through her posts. "Welcome to my sanctuary!" The caption read below a picture of my lake house, except it didn't look like mine anymore. The walls had been painted a garish teal. The sleek, minimalist furniture I'd chosen had been replaced with bohemian-style decor. And, God help me, there was a macrame wall hanging in my dining room. Hashtags filled the caption: $, new beginnings, $, fresh start, $, blessed life. I swallowed down the nausea rising in my throat. This wasn't a temporary stay. Vivi had claimed my house. I clicked through more posts, each one a new betrayal. A before and after shot of my living room. A selfie of Vivi sipping wine on the deck. The caption reading, "Best decision I ever made." She wasn't just squatting, she was settling in. My fingers moved on their own, typing out a message. Me. "Why are you living in my house?" The dots appeared immediately. Then her response. Vivi. "Oh, hey sis. It's just temporary. You weren't using it anyway. Chill." I stared at my screen, disbelief boiling into fury. Chill! Chill! Every instinct screamed at me to drive straight to the airport, but I knew I needed a plan. This wasn't just Vivi overstepping. This was outright entitlement, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I dropped into my chair, took a deep breath, and pulled up my travel app. One-way ticket to Chicago. First available flight. I confirmed the booking. If Vivi thought she could take what was mine, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The cold Chicago air hit my face the moment I stepped out of the airport, a stark contrast to the dry warmth I'd left behind in Los Angeles. I tightened my coat around me, ignoring the sharp wind that cut through the gaps. My fingers clenched the handle of my carry-on as I strode toward the rental car counter. There was no time for nostalgia, no space for hesitation. I had a house to reclaim. As I pulled onto the familiar highway, my mind drifted to the countless times I had driven this route before, when the lake house had been mine. The excitement of closing the deal, the weekends spent personally overseeing renovations, the pride I felt standing on that deck, knowing I had built something from the ground up. Now, the thought of seeing it again filled me with a suffocating mix of rage and apprehension. I turned onto the winding road leading to the lakefront properties, my heart hammering harder with every mile. Then, as my headlights illuminated the driveway, my stomach dropped. The house stood before me, but it was no longer mine. Warm lights glowed through the large windows, casting inviting shadows onto the snow-dusted ground. A new porch swing swayed gently in the wind, one I had never bought. Potted plants lined the entryway, and the most jarring change of all, a sign beside the door, carved elegantly in cursive, read, "Vivi's Haven." My throat tightened. I killed the engine and sat motionless for a moment, staring at what had once been my sanctuary, now fully transformed into hers. The betrayal twisted deeper inside me. This wasn't just squatting. This was a hostile takeover. Stepping out of the car, I squared my shoulders and walked up the porch steps. The key I had in my purse was useless. I already knew she had changed the locks. Instead, I reached for the doorbell, pressing it firmly. Muffled voices sounded inside, followed by quick footsteps. The door swung open, and there she was. Vivi stood in the doorway, wrapped in a cozy knit sweater, a glass of red wine in hand. She blinked at me, then broke into a smile, as if I were some long-lost friend dropping by unannounced. "Sarah!" "Wow, what a surprise!" I stepped forward, my jaw tight. "Let me in." For a second, something flickered in her eyes, something calculating, but she stepped aside with a sigh. "Fine, but no drama, okay?" I just got the place perfect. I walked in, and the second I did, my stomach churned. The sleek, modern aesthetic I had carefully curated was gone. Instead, the walls were a warm terracotta, mismatched furniture filled the space, and vintage tapestries hung where my minimalist artwork once was. The room smelled like sandalwood incense and cinnamon, nothing like the clean, crisp air I was used to. Then my gaze landed on the mantel above the fireplace. My framed photos were gone, replaced with pictures of Vivi and my parents. Not a single trace of me. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just a redesign. This was erasure. I turned back to Vivi, my voice dangerously calm. "Where are my things?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, don't freak out. They're in the garage." I inhaled sharply. The garage. Before I could say another word, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, my stomach flipping as I read the notification. A bank alert. I clicked into it, my pulse pounding. A withdrawal, a loan, and my name on it. Blood rushed in my ears as I scrolled through the details. Vivi had taken out a $10,000 loan using my identity. My grip on the phone tightened. This wasn't just entitlement. This was fraud. "Vivi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did you do?" She rolled her eyes, plopping onto the couch. Calm down. It's just a little loan for some upgrades. You'll barely notice." I stared at her, my vision tunneling. "Upgrades?" My voice wavered with restrained fury. "You took out a loan in my name for your upgrades?" She let out an exaggerated sigh, like I was overreacting. "Look, you have money, Sarah. You wouldn't even notice 10 grand missing if you weren't obsessively checking your accounts every 5 seconds. A sharp laugh escaped me, void of any humor. "This isn't about the money, Vivi. This is fraud." Her expression darkened. "Come on, you were never going to rent this place out. You don't even live here. I needed it more than you." A slow, burning rage coiled in my chest. "I own this house, Vivi. You had no right." "Girls, please!" I spun toward the voice. My mother, Lillian, stood at the entryway to the kitchen, her face filled with nervous tension. Beside her, my father, Gregory, crossed his arms. My stomach twisted at their expressions, guilt, but not regret. "You knew," I said, realization sinking in. "You knew about this." Lillian's shoulders slumped. "She needed help, Sarah. She was starting over." "She stole from me." My voice rose, shaking. "She stole from me, and you just let her." Gregory frowned, his voice firm. "She's your sister. You have your life in LA, your career. Vivi has nothing. She needed this more than you." My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about me never mattering as much as Vivi. I exhaled slowly, my fingers trembling as I clenched them into fists. "So what now?" I asked, my voice eerily steady. Lillian and Gregory exchanged a glance before my mother finally spoke. "We were thinking, maybe it's best if you just sign the house over to Vivi." Everything inside me stilled. The room blurred as rage, heartbreak, and absolute disbelief crashed over me. They didn't just enable her. They wanted me erased. I let out a sharp breath, nodding slowly as my heart pounded violently in my chest. "I see." Vivi smirked, already looking victorious. But she didn't know what I knew. I turned on my heels, my mind already forming the next step. My phone vibrated in my hand. A text from Noah. "Call me. We need to move fast." I took one last look at my family, at the house that was supposed to be mine, and walked straight out the door. This wasn't just a fight over property anymore. This was war. I didn't even get the chance to strike first. Before I could finalize a plan with Noah, before I could even take a breath, Vivi had done what she did best. She turned the tables. Not just on me, but on the truth itself. I was sitting in a dimly lit cafe in downtown Chicago, nursing a rapidly cooling espresso as Noah Everly, my attorney and longtime friend, scrolled through her tablet. Her sharp brown eyes flicked over the documents in front of her, occasionally pausing to type something. The low hum of conversation around us was distant, muffled beneath the pounding in my head. "The fraud is clear-cut," Noah finally said, glancing up. "The loan she took out in your name? That's easily provable in court. And the unauthorized occupancy? You have every legal right to evict her." A surge of relief loosened my shoulders for the first time in days. So, we start the process? Noah nodded. We file a formal complaint first thing Monday. If she refuses to leave, we take it to court. She paused. This won't be easy, though. You need to be prepared for pushback. Pushback. That word felt almost quaint compared to what Vivi was truly capable of. My phone buzzed. Then Noah's. And just like that, the air in the cafe shifted. Noah's brows knitted together as she read the notification, her lips tightening. Oh! Wow! A sinking feeling spread in my stomach. I grabbed my phone and opened the link she had forwarded me. The moment I saw the headline, my stomach flipped. Sister's Betrayal. Wealthy investor Sarah Laurent abandons family, tries to steal back sister's home. I clicked on the video attached. And there she was, Vivi, standing on the very deck of my lake house, tears glistening in her eyes, her voice soft but strong as she spoke directly into the camera. This house was my fresh start, she said, her voice thick with emotion. After everything I went through, I finally had a place to heal. And now my sister is trying to rip it away from me just because she can. The camera zoomed out, revealing the newly redecorated space behind her. Warm lighting, cozy furniture, the perfect backdrop for a woman supposedly starting over. She has a whole life in L.A., Vivi continued, shaking her head in feigned disbelief. She doesn't even need this place, but I do, and now she wants to kick me out, just like that? The comments below were flooding in. Sarah sounds like a heartless BXXX. How can she be so greedy? Her own sister? Vivi deserves that house. She made it a home. My fingers curled into a fist around my phone. She's weaponizing the internet, I muttered. Noah exhaled slowly. She's controlling the narrative. A muscle in my jaw twitched. I could already see where this was going. Vivi had always been good at twisting things, but now she had an audience. An army of strangers who were eating up her version of reality without question. I was no longer just fighting my sister. I was fighting public perception. As if reading my mind, Noah said, "We need to act fast. The longer this spreads, the harder it'll be to undo the damage." I nodded, forcing myself to think logically, not emotionally. "What's our next move?" She hesitated before responding. "We could go public too. Release a statement, set the record straight." But the thought of airing out my personal life online, of engaging in a social media war, made my skin crawl. I wasn't Vivi. I didn't live for attention. I lived for results. "No," I said finally. "I'll fight this the right way, legally." Noah gave a firm nod. "Then we need to move even faster." I barely had time to process her words before another email notification popped up. This one was worse. It wasn't just a PR nightmare anymore. It was criminal. The email was from a contractor CCing me on an invoice for renovations at the lake house. The problem? The contract was signed with my name. I hadn't signed a damn thing. "She forged my signature," I whispered. Noah's face darkened. "That's felony fraud." My blood ran cold. Vivi wasn't just taking over my house. She was digging me into a financial hole. I didn't even realize I had stood up until Noah grabbed my wrist. "Sarah!" "I need to go," I said, voice sharp, heart racing. I was done waiting. I was done playing defense. I stormed out of the cafe, dialing Vivi's number as I hailed a cab. She didn't answer, so I texted instead. "We need to talk. Now?" And then I went straight to her house, my house. The moment she opened the door, wine glass in hand, smirking, I saw red. I pushed past her, marching into the living room. "You forged my signature?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, relax. It's just some home improvements." I pulled up the email and shoved the phone in her face. $10,000 in renovations? With my name on it? She glanced at the screen, unbothered. "You're acting like you can't afford it." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so insane. "You committed fraud, Vivi." My voice was dangerously low now. "Do you even understand what that means?" Vivi smirked. "And what?" You're gonna sue your own sister? You really think Mom and Dad will let you? I took a slow breath. You're right. They won't. Her smug expression didn't waver. Exactly. But they don't matter anymore, I cut her off. This isn't just about family. This is legal now. For the first time, her confidence cracked. I could see the flicker of realization behind her eyes, the slow, creeping fear that maybe, just maybe, she had pushed too far. I stepped closer, voice steady. You have one chance to fix this. Take down that video. Pay back the money. Get out. She swallowed. Then, just like that, the fear was gone, replaced with the same arrogance I had grown up seeing. You know, she mused, tilting her head. At this point, everyone thinks this house is mine. So really, who do you think they're going to believe? Something inside me snapped. I turned on my heel, leaving without another word. As I stepped outside, my phone vibrated. A message from Noah. Time to go all in. Let's take this to court. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around my phone. Vivi wanted a war? She was about to get one. I woke up to an email notification that made my breath hitch. Subject: urgent. Violations at your property. Lakefront Homeowners Association. I sat up in bed, instantly alert as I skimmed the email. It was from the neighborhood board overseeing the lakefront properties. They had received multiple complaints about Vivi, specifically about her renting out the house to short-term guests. My fingers tightened around my phone. Apparently, Vivi had turned my lake house into an Airbnb listing. The email detailed how there had been excessive noise complaints, parties stretching into the early morning, and an incident where a guest nearly started a fire on the back deck. The board was considering legal action against Vivi for violating the homeowner agreement. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like vindication. I wasn't the only one fed up with Vivi. I wasn't crazy. She had finally pushed too far, and now there were real consequences. I swung my legs over the bed, already typing a response. I'd be at their next meeting. This was my chance to take control back. Walking into the Lakefront Homeowners Association meeting later that day, I braced myself. The conference room was filled with stern-looking board members and a handful of concerned neighbors. Some looked tired, others downright angry. I was barely seated before an older man, Mr. Parker, stood up, his weathered hands gripping a folder. Miss Laurent, I assume you're here about the situation with your sister? I nodded. I just read the complaints. I had no idea she was renting the house out. Another board member scoffed. Well, she sure knew, and she's been making a killing off it. Guests in and out every weekend. It's turned into a damn hotel. Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Mr. Parker slid a paper toward me. Here's proof. An active Airbnb listing under the name Vivi's Haven. I grabbed the sheet, bile rising in my throat as I read through it. Vivi had been profiting off my home. And the worst part? She had 5-star reviews. Such a charming lakeside escape. Vivi is an amazing host. Loved our weekend retreat in Vivi's home. We'll definitely be back. Vivi's home. I gritted my teeth. She's breaking multiple bylaws, another board member said. She either stops immediately or will escalate this to legal action. I forced a steady breath. I'll handle it. I'll make sure she stops. A part of me felt relief. This was the first real threat against Vivi that didn't come from me. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't back down without a fight. And I was right. Later that night, Noah called me, her voice sharp. Have you seen it yet? My stomach clenched. Seen what? A second later, a link popped up in my messages. I clicked it and froze. Vivi had posted another video, but this time, it wasn't just her sob story about needing a home. It was a full-blown smear campaign against me. I stared at the screen as Vivi, tears pooling in her eyes, voice cracking just the right amount, spoke directly to the camera. My sister is trying to make me homeless. She got the neighborhood to gang up on me. She's using her money and power to ruin my life. Below, the comment section was exploding. Sarah is heartless. Disgusting how rich people treat family. She doesn't deserve that house. Vivi made it a home. The familiar, suffocating rage curled in my chest. It didn't matter that I had facts, contracts, and bank statements. Vivi had the court of public opinion, and I was losing. The next morning, my parents called. I almost didn't pick up, but a part of me, the part that still wanted to believe they'd see reason, made me answer. Sarah! My father's voice was clipped. What the hell are you doing? I pressed my fingers to my temple. What am I doing? Your sister is in tears, my mother interjected, her voice thick with emotion. How could you turn the entire neighborhood against her? I let out a sharp laugh. I didn't turn anyone against her. She did that all on her own. She's just trying to survive, my father said coldly. And you? She committed fraud. She's illegally renting out my house. But sure, let's make me the villain. Silence. Then my mother's broken whisper. You're tearing this family apart. Something inside me cracked. Not from sadness, not from guilt, from realization. It didn't matter what Vivi did. It didn't matter what proof I had. They would always choose her. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly. Then I did what I should have done a long time ago. I hung up. That night, I sat in my hotel room, phone in hand, staring at the growing pile of slanderous posts Vivi had made. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to go online, to fight back, to tell the world the real story. But that wasn't me. I wasn't Vivi, and I didn't need to convince strangers of the truth. I just needed to win. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed Noah's name. She picked up on the first ring. Sarah? I took a steady breath. File the lawsuit. A pause. You're sure? I stared out at the city lights, my grip on the phone tightening. I don't care if she's my sister, I said. This ends now. I signed my name with a steady hand, but inside, my pulse was erratic. The papers in front of me weren't just legal documents. They were a declaration of war. Across the table, Noah slid the final stack of paperwork into a folder, her expression unreadable. She'll get served by the end of the week, she said, her tone cool and professional. There's no backing out after this, Sarah. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know. I hadn't wanted it to come to this, a lawsuit against my own sister. But Vivi had left me no choice. She had stolen my house, my money, my name, and turned my life into a public spectacle. If she wanted a fight, she was about to get one. I exhaled sharply, pressing my fingers against my temples. How bad do you think she'll react? Noah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the desk. Knowing Vivi? A dry smile flickered across her lips, like a cornered animal. And she was right, because the moment Vivi received the lawsuit, she went nuclear. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. First, it was Vivi, crying, screaming into my voicemail. Then came the texts, long-winded, furious, alternating between begging and threatening. I ignored them. Then my parents called. I should have known this was coming. Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? My father's voice boomed through the speaker the moment I picked up. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. Hi, Dad. You're suing your sister? Have you lost your damn mind? I rubbed my temples. No, Dad. Vivi lost her mind when she stole from me. I could hear my mother sobbing in the background. She has nowhere else to go, Sarah. She's your sister. I had heard that line so many times it had lost all meaning. I gritted my teeth. And what about me? What about the fact that she committed fraud? That she took thousands of dollars in my name? That she's been renting out my house like a damn hotel? Dad scoffed. You're making this into something bigger than it is. I felt something inside me snap. Bigger than it is? My voice was razor sharp now. She forged my signature. She drained my credit. She's turned my own home into a public circus. But sure, let's talk about how I'm the bad guy here. Sarah. No, I cut him off. You don't get to call me and demand I fix her mess. Not this time. Silence. Then my mother's broken whisper. You're tearing this family apart. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. But I didn't break. I didn't cave the way they expected me to. I only took a slow, deep breath before responding. No, Mom. Vivi did that all on her own. And I hung up. When I arrived at my parents' house later that evening, I knew the fight waiting for me inside would be ugly. Lillian was perched on the couch, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Gregory stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight with anger. And Vivi. Vivi was smug. She lounged on the love seat like a queen, her legs crossed, a glass of wine in hand. "Wow," she drawled, flicking her gaze up at me. "That was fast. Did you drive straight here after ruining my life?" I dropped a stack of legal papers onto the coffee table. The weight of them landed with a heavy thud. "You did that all on your own," I shot back. Vivi rolled her eyes, swirling her wine lazily. "It's just a house, Sarah." My vision went white-hot with fury. I slammed my hands onto the table. "No, Vivi, it's my house, and you don't get to steal from me just because we're family." Gregory stepped forward. "We don't take each other to court." I turned my gaze to him, my voice icy. "Then tell me, where was this family loyalty when Vivi was using my name to take out loans? Where was it when she was renting out my home for profit? Where was it when she decided to erase me from my own property?" Silence. Lillian sniffled. "Sarah, we can fix this. Please, just drop the lawsuit and talk this through." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Talk? Like we did last time? Or the time before that? Or the dozen other times Vivi has manipulated her way out of consequences?" Vivi huffed, setting down her wineglass. "Oh my God, you're so dramatic." I turned to her. "And you're a thief." The room felt like it was splitting apart, tension thick enough to choke on. Gregory ran a hand over his face. "For God's sake, Sarah! She's your sister." I shook my head slowly. She's just a liar." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. For the first time, Vivi's smirk wavered, but just as quickly, she covered it with a cold smile. "You think you've won?" she murmured. A chill slithered down my spine. Vivi reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and tapped the screen. Then her gaze locked onto mine. "I've got one last move to play." A sharp, panicked sensation curled in my stomach. "What the hell does that mean?" I demanded. She just grinned. And then, before I could react, she pressed dial. "Hey, yeah," she said, her voice saccharine sweet. "Get the cameras ready. We're taking this public." A cold dread settled into my bones. Because whatever she was about to do, it was going to make everything worse. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It vibrated against my nightstand, a relentless, shrill demand for attention. Bleary-eyed, I grabbed it, my stomach tightening at the sheer number of missed calls and unread messages. Noah, my assistant, clients, even old college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Something was wrong. I pulled up my notifications, my heart pounding, as I read the first text from Noah. "Turn on the news, now." A sickening sense of déjà vu crept over me as I fumbled for the remote, switching the TV on. The screen flickered to life, and there she was. Vivi. Sitting in my house, on my couch, wearing a perfectly curated expression of devastation. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom. Sister's betrayal. Local woman faces eviction at the hands of wealthy investor sibling. I watched in stunned silence as the camera zoomed in on Vivi, her lips trembling as she blinked back tears. "I just wanted a home," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I lost everything after my divorce, and now my own sister, my own flesh and blood, is trying to throw me out on the street just because she can." I gripped the edge of the nightstand so hard my knuckles turned white. She wasn't just lying, she was performing. The interviewer, a woman with a sympathetic frown, leaned in. "So you're saying Sarah Laurent, the well-known real estate investor, wants to take away your home, while she lives comfortably in Los Angeles?" Vivi nodded, sniffling. "She doesn't need it. She never even cared about it until I made it a home." The rage that filled me was blinding. I barely heard the rest of the segment as it cut to B-roll footage. Shots of the lake house, Vivi's haven, the cozy decor she had installed, contrasted against a headshot of me in a sharp business suit, looking every bit the cold, ruthless landlord she was painting me as. Then came the social media wildfire. Justice for Vivi was already trending. The comments were pouring in. Sarah Laurent is disgusting. How greedy do you have to be to evict your own sister? She's just a rich BXXX who only cares about money. I felt the damage happening in real time. My business email flooded with angry messages. My company's Yelp and Google reviews tanked overnight. Clients, actual long-term clients, were messaging me, asking if the rumors were true. Vivi hadn't just turned our family against me. She had turned the world against me. And the worst part? It was working. Hours later, I sat in my office downtown, my hands curled into fists on Noah's desk. "This is defamation," I hissed. "We can sue her for this." Noah leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "Technically, she's not saying anything that can be proven false. It's all manipulated, but not outright slander." I let out a frustrated breath. "So what do we do?" Noah didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. I frowned. "What's that?" She slid it across the desk. "Something you're going to enjoy." I opened it, scanning the first few pages. My brows knitted together. A private investigator report. And then, I saw the name that made me go still. Theo, Vivi's ex. I read through the file, my stomach twisting with every new revelation. Theo hadn't just been crashing at the house occasionally. He had been stealing from it. Expensive items, antiques, electronics, furniture. And worst of all, he had been selling them behind Vivi's back. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped me. "She's getting scammed by her own scammer." Noah smirked. "Karma's a BXXX." I set the file down, inhaling deeply. "She doesn't know yet, does she?" "Nope." Noah leaned forward. "And when she does, she's going to self-destruct." The shift in power was almost tangible. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I had leverage. I had the truth, and I was going to use it. That evening, Vivi got served. A formal court order to vacate the premises within 30 days. Along with it, I sent an anonymous email with every shred of evidence about Theo's scam. I pictured her opening it, reading those words, realizing she was about to lose everything. It should have felt satisfying, but instead, all I felt was cold resolve. Because Vivi was too stubborn to back down. She was going to fight to the bitter end. And I was ready. 2 days later, Vivi stormed into the house, slamming the door behind her. "Theo!" she snarled. He barely looked up from where he sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. She threw the printed evidence at him. "What the hell is this?" Theo glanced at the papers lazily. "Huh, guess you found out." Vivi's breath hitched. You've been stealing from me?" Theo grinned, standing up. "From you?" He let out a cruel chuckle. "No, sweetheart. I was stealing from Sarah, but you were too dumb to notice." Her face twisted in fury. "You used me." Theo leaned in close, smirking. "And you used your sister." Vivi slapped him. Theo barely flinched. He just laughed. "Enjoy the rest of your 30 days, babe." Then he walked out, leaving Vivi alone in the wreckage of her own making. But she wasn't done. She wasn't going to go down quietly. And I should have known that. I was finishing up work when I got a text. From Vivi. Just 2 words. "You win." I frowned, my fingers hesitating over my phone. It was too easy. Vivi never admitted defeat. Then another notification. This time, a social media post. I clicked on it, my stomach plummeting as I read her words. "If I can't have the house, neither can she." My blood turned ice cold. I grabbed my coat and ran for the door. Because whatever Vivi was about to do next, it wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. My phone rang, slicing through the silence like a blade. Noah's name flashed on the screen. The moment I answered, Her voice came through sharp and urgent. "Sarah, turn on the news! Now!" Dread curled in my stomach as I grabbed the remote and flipped through channels. And then, I saw it. A live broadcast. My lake house. And Vivi. She stood outside, framed by the early morning sun, her hair styled to perfection, her face set in an expression of false vulnerability. A cluster of reporters surrounded her, cameras rolling. She was holding a press conference. A press conference. About my house. I sat frozen as Vivi smiled at the cameras, her voice gentle yet commanding. "I just want to thank everyone for their support. Today, I'm here to clear the air and put an end to all these lies." A murmur rippled through the crowd. One reporter stepped forward. "So you're saying you legally own this house?" Vivi nodded, pressing a hand to her heart as if this were some emotional moment for her. "Yes, there's been so much misinformation, but let me be clear. This home was given to me. It's mine." I shot to my feet. I grabbed my keys, my pulse hammering as I bolted out the door. Because this was war. By the time I pulled up to the house, the scene was a circus. News vans lined the driveway. Reporters with microphones jostled for position. Curious neighbors lingered at the edge of the property, whispering among themselves. And there, front and center, stood Vivi, still spewing her carefully crafted lies. I slammed the car door and stalked forward, shoving past the gathered crowd. Vivi saw me approaching, and for the briefest second, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. But she masked it quickly, flashing her practiced smile at the cameras. "And here she is now," Vivi said smoothly, turning toward me as if I were some guest at her event. "My sister Sarah. Maybe now we can finally talk about this rationally." I stared at her, rage simmering beneath my skin. "Are you seriously doing this?" She tilted her head. "Doing what? Defending my home?" I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. "Vivi, this isn't your house." She let out a breathy laugh. "That's not what the public thinks. And honestly, Sarah, after everything you've done—" Before she could finish, a man in a suit stepped into view. The murmurs in the crowd hushed instantly. A legal representative from the court. Vivi stiffened. The man cleared his throat, then held up an official envelope. "Miss Vivi Laurent, you are being served with a formal eviction notice, effective immediately." A collective gasp rippled through the press. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. The narrative changed in an instant. A journalist from the local news station turned to Vivi. "Miss Laurent, how do you respond to this?" Vivi's face drained of color. She hadn't expected this. I crossed my arms, my voice calm but razor sharp. "You were saying something about misinformation?" Her jaw clenched. You set me up." I raised an eyebrow. "You set yourself up." Vivi turned wildly toward the cameras, her smile brittle. This is just a misunderstanding. I was promised this house." Another journalist spoke up. "By whom?" Vivi faltered. For the first time, she had no answer. And just like that, the entire illusion she had built started to crack. A commotion near the back of the crowd made me turn. Gregory and Lillian were arriving, pushing through the sea of people. I folded my arms, waiting. My mother's eyes were already glassy with tears, her hands clasped tightly together as she took in the scene. The reporters, the eviction notice, the absolute spectacle Vivi had created. Gregory's expression was unreadable, but the way his jaw tensed told me everything. They had seen the truth now. There was no hiding it. Vivi turned to them, desperation creeping into her voice. "Mom, Dad, say something! You know this house was supposed to be mine." Lillian opened her mouth, but no words came. Gregory only sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. For the first time in our entire lives, they had no defense for her. Vivi's face crumbled. Her last lifeline had just snapped. The press conference fell apart after that. Reporters started shifting their focus. Questions turned harsher. The narrative had flipped. "Miss Laurent, what about the fraudulent loan taken in your sister's name? Were you aware of the illegal Airbnb operation? What about the forged renovation contracts? Vivi backed away, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She turned to our parents one last time. Please, she whispered. But Gregory just looked away. Lillian wiped her tears. And that was it. She had no allies left. With one final, furious glare at me, Vivi shoved past the cameras and stormed off, her heels clicking against the pavement as she disappeared down the street. The crowd slowly began to disperse. The cameras lowered. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I lingered outside the house as the last news van pulled away. The air felt different now. Lighter. Mine again. Noah's voice came through my phone as I picked up her call. Well, she said, amusement in her tone. That went well. I let out a slow breath. Yeah. But even as I said it, I knew, deep down, this wasn't over yet. Vivi had lost everything. And people like her? They never go down quietly. I collapsed onto the stiff mattress of my hotel bed, staring at the ceiling as exhaustion seeped into my bones. The press conference had ended hours ago, but the fallout was far from over. My phone sat on the nightstand, still buzzing relentlessly. Texts, emails, notifications that I couldn't bring myself to check. I already knew what they would say. Some messages would be from friends and colleagues, offering their congratulations, saying, "You finally got justice." Others, probably hundreds of them, would be filled with vitriol. Strangers on the internet calling me heartless, greedy, a soulless businesswoman who destroyed her own family for profit. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I just felt hollow, because no matter how this ended, there was no winning here. Vivi had lost, but I had lost too. The final court hearing was scheduled for the next morning, and I barely slept before it. By the time I arrived at the courthouse, my nerves were a frayed wire, ready to snap. Noah was already waiting inside, her expression unreadable as she flipped through documents. "It's a formality at this point," she assured me. "You've already won." I nodded, gripping the edge of the table. "I know, you just need to hear it from the judge," she finished. She was right. I needed the final official word that this nightmare was over. Vivi arrived late, looking different. She wasn't the overconfident, smug woman who had stood in front of the press, spinning her lies. She wasn't the tantrum-throwing sister who had always manipulated her way out of consequences. She looked defeated. Her usually flawless hair was unkempt, her expensive clothes wrinkled like she had barely made the effort. Her eyes, normally filled with calculated defiance, were empty. The hearing itself was quick. The judge upheld the eviction order. Vivi had 48 hours to vacate the property. Additionally, the court had opened an official investigation into the fraudulent loans, the forged contracts, the entire mess she had created. I expected to feel victory, but all I felt was tired. Noah turned to me after it was over. "It's done," she said. "She can't fight this anymore." I nodded. "Yeah, it's done." But then why did I still feel like there was something unfinished? I returned to the lake house later that afternoon. Vivi was already there, packing her things. For the first time in a long time, we were alone. She barely looked up as I stepped inside, shoving clothes into a suitcase, her movements sharp and furious. I watched her for a long moment before finally speaking. "You're really leaving then?" She laughed bitterly. "What else am I supposed to do?" A part of me expected her to argue, to lash out. But she just kept packing. And somehow that made it feel worse. She zipped up her suitcase and turned to face me, arms crossed. "I bet you're happy now." I shook my head. "No, Vivi, I'm not." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Right, because this was so hard for you." I exhaled slowly. "I just want my life back." For the first time, she didn't have a snarky reply. She just looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. The sister I used to know, but it was gone in an instant. Vivi shook her head, grabbing her bags. "Doesn't matter, it's over." She walked past me without another word. Outside, my parents were waiting. Gregory and Lillian stood near the driveway, nervous, hesitant, their hands clasped together, as if they didn't know whether to comfort Vivi or confront me. For the first time, they were forced to see Vivi for who she really was. But it was too late. Lillian stepped forward first, her voice soft. "Syrah, she's still your sister." I didn't hesitate. "And I'm still your daughter, but you never fought for me." The words landed hard, and for the first time in my life, they had no response. Gregory opened his mouth, then closed it. Lillian looked away. And I realized something. I wasn't just taking back my house, I was taking back myself. Vivi didn't say goodbye. She climbed into her car, the trunk stuffed with whatever she could carry, her jaw set, her eyes dark with resentment. She didn't even glance back at me as she pulled out of the driveway. But right before she disappeared down the road, I saw her hand tighten on the steering wheel. And I knew. This wasn't over. Not really. Maybe one day she'd come back. Maybe one day she'd try to make amends. But today wasn't that day. Today, I stood on my porch, looking at my house, and for the first time in years, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Peace. The wind shifted, rustling the trees around the lake, carrying away the remnants of everything that had happened here. And as I took a deep breath, I knew. This house was finally mine again. The house was finally quiet. For the first time in months, I walked through my home without feeling like an intruder. The walls were back to their original, elegant color. The furniture was restored to how it had been before Vivi turned my sanctuary into her personal playground. Everything was back in place. And yet, the scars remained. I ran my fingers along the smooth wooden surface of the dining table, remembering the screaming matches, the accusations, the betrayals that had unfolded here. I should have felt victorious, but instead, all I felt was exhaustion. Vivi had officially vacated the house 48 hours ago. Noah had called me that morning with an update. "She's under full legal review now," she said. "The fraud, the illegal rentals, the forged contracts, it's all being investigated." I nodded, listening as Noah continued. "The court ruled that any profits she made from Airbnb will be seized as damages. It won't cover everything, but it's a start." It was more than I had expected. And still, I knew the truth. Vivi would never take responsibility for any of it. She wouldn't reflect, she wouldn't change. She would just find someone else to manipulate, someone else to spin her sob stories to. And for the first time, I accepted that it wasn't my problem anymore. That night, as I sat curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I frowned, unlocking the screen. Vivi. A single message. "I know you hate me, but I want to talk. No lawyers, just us." My stomach twisted. My first instinct was to delete it, to let it go unanswered, just like she had let all my pleas for fairness go ignored. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the words, my fingers hovering over the screen. I wasn't sure why. The next afternoon, I walked into a small coffee shop downtown, the scent of roasted espresso curling around me. And there she was. Vivi sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked different, less polished, more tired. There were faint shadows under her eyes, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, she didn't look smug. I slid into the chair across from her, studying her face. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Vivi let out a breath. "I screwed up." I tilted my head. "Yeah, you did." She let out a weak laugh, shaking her head. "You're not gonna make this easy, huh?" I shrugged. "Why should I?" Another silence stretched between us. Vivi toyed with the rim of her cup. "Are we ever going to be okay?" I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know." And I meant it. Because forgiveness wasn't something she could just ask for and expect to receive. It was something she had to earn. And I didn't know if she ever would. When we finally parted ways, there were no hugs, no promises to stay in touch, No dramatic reconciliations. Just a quiet, lingering understanding that this chapter of our lives was over. As I walked back toward my house, I stopped at the front steps, taking in the sight of it. My house. My home. For the first time in years, I knew exactly where I stood. And maybe some things couldn't be fixed, but at least now, I didn't have to carry them anymore. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means losing people you thought would always be there. But in that loss, you find something far more valuable: self-respect. I fought for what was mine, not just the house, but my boundaries, my dignity, my peace. And in the end, I learned that some things can't be fixed, but that doesn't mean you stop moving forward. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over family, know this: you are not alone. Subscribe for more stories that remind us of the strength we all carry within.